Putin's blazing birthday. Drone strikes on the oil refinery in Tyumen, new developments in Belgorod. Massive power outage. Russians must feel the cost of the blackout in Zelenskyy. A harsh statement is made. Trump approved the delivery of Muscovy missiles to Ukraine. The Kremlin is already shouting about escalation. They routed a saboteur in Yampil and liberated Sichneve in the Dnipropetrovsk region. China has joined Russia's shadow war against Europe. And Dmitry Medvedev named the goal of Russian drone attacks on the continent: to scare NATO with war. Hello, my name is Katerina Nestorenko, and right now the main news. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose each other on YouTube.
Every year by the morning of October 7th, there will be a message. Happy birthday to me.
Putin's birthday. Hot Ukrainian gifts flew into Russia. Yesterday, he turned 73. The first explosions at the Saki airfield in occupied Crimea occurred at around 12:23. Next, a new record. Ukrainian drones bombed an oil refinery in Tyumen, located 2,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. According to eyewitnesses, more than 15 fire trucks and ambulances arrived at the scene.
In
Belgorod also received greetings with new explosions and a massive power outage. Moreover, Russian air defense also joined in the celebration. In Stary Oskol, the air defense managed to fire at a high-rise building. Congratulations on Putin's birthday. Also, as far as Nizhny Novgorod and Dzerzhinsk. In Yaroslavl, the airport was closed. Meanwhile, one of the largest oil refineries in the Russian Federation has suspended the operation of its most powerful crude oil processing unit after a drone attack, Reuters reports. This refers to the Kurishi oil refinery in the Leningrad region, which was targeted by Ukrainian drones on October 4th. According to the agency, restoration work may take about 1 month.
According to industry sources, in 2004, the plant processed 17.5 million tons of oil, which accounts for 6.6% of the total oil refining volume in Russia. In the same year, the plant produced 2 million tons of gasoline, 7.1 million tons of diesel fuel, 6.1 million tons of fuel oil, and 600,000 tons of bitumen.
Meanwhile, Russia itself is facing an electricity shortage. According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, the capacity shortfall has already reached 25 gigawatts. What do you say? The Ukrainian armed forces have launched a real energy war against the aggressor. So what awaits Russians this winter if their dictator still doesn't come to his senses and refuses to enter peace negotiations on Ukraine's terms? Right now, we'll talk about this in our report.
8 airports have been closed. Fires from Tuapse to Nizhny Novgorod. 251 drones over 16 regions. From the night of October 5th to 6th, Russia was subjected to the largest Ukrainian drone attack in the past 6 months. A strike was carried out on the CHP plant in Klintsy, Bryansk region. There, power outages began. And in Belgorod, there was a blackout. Part of the city was left without electricity for a long time. And this is not the first time.
And the city went dark.
Good morning, dear friends. As a result of last night's events, and to start with the energy sector, our distributed network, despite the current situation, will maintain partial power supply in AT4, despite the point PC4, 4, 5 to 6.
During the winter and heating season, Russia has become accustomed to striking at Ukraine's electrical infrastructure. And now, for the first time in the 3.5 years of war, Kiev is not only threatening retaliatory strikes, but is actually carrying them out.
If they threaten a blackout in Ukraine's capital, then the Kremlin should know there will be a blackout in Russia's capital as well.
Any action by Russia aimed at harming Ukraine provokes a symmetrical response. This also applies to the energy sector.
The president was absolutely right when he said that we will find both the means and the weapons and we will carry out these operations. They will definitely realize that this way they will not gain any advantage. Any action by Russia will definitely be met with a counteraction. Andriy Hinatov, Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
Blackouts in Russian regions and even in Moscow are quite possible. And there are several reasons for this. One of them, of course, is the strikes by the Ukrainian armed forces on the power system. The second is the sanctions that are already in effect. As a result, it is impossible to purchase spare parts and equipment, and the existing ones are degrading and becoming unusable.
Russia's energy sector today is a powder keg. The capacity deficit has reached 25 gigawatts. This is not an isolated failure, but a systemic collapse. Then this is even before any systematic strikes, which Russia itself is bringing closer by its actions against our energy sector. Instead of investing in its own thermal and hydroelectric power plants, Moscow is losing reserves due to sanctions and aging equipment. Andrei Kovalenko, head of KPD.
If Ukraine starts systematically striking thermal and hydroelectric power plants in all regions of the Russian Federation, as happened in the Belgorod region on the night from Sunday to Monday, it will be extremely difficult to restore Russia's energy sector. Currently, 42 regions of the Russian Federation are already introducing consumption restrictions during peak hours. In the center of the country, in Siberia and in the Far East, there is an energy shortage everywhere. And this is even without any lost capacity. When the Russians destroy Ukrainian energy infrastructure, we have a safety net. We receive kilowatts from the EU, as well as spare parts for repairs. In turn, Russia does not have such assistance. Their energy workers can only rely on themselves. And as the latest strike in the south showed, Russia is facing a very long, cold and dark winter.
Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of you are watching us from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the USA. We Ukrainians are very grateful for your support and proud to have such sensible viewers. Let us know in the comments under this episode as well, which country you're watching us from and whether people there support our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments. And now, let's continue. Up next is the most interesting part. Part of Sumy is without power. Recently, a Russian drone struck a civilian infrastructure facility in Zareknoe. In Kharkiv, enemy drone attacks caused power outages. As a result of the shelling, the Chernihiv, Dnipropetrovsk and Donetsk regions were also partially left without power. The danger at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is increasing. On October 6th, IAEA experts recorded explosions just 1 kilometer from the plant. 2 shells landed nearby, and the plant itself has been without external power supply for 2 weeks now.
The shelling increases the risks to nuclear safety at the plant, which has been without external power for almost 2 weeks, the Director General reported.
Russia continues to strike at our energy infrastructure, trying to leave Ukrainians without light and heat. But President Zelenskyy is sending a clear message to Moscow. We are ready for the challenges and will make Russia pay for every strike.
Russia will do what it must to achieve its objectives.
Everything possible to prevent us from extracting our own gas. They will do everything. It will be difficult to protect all of this. At the same time, the task has been set to have funds for gas imports so that people have gas. What will happen with electricity? Today it's hard for me to say. We will be ready for all challenges. We are working on this every day. We will defend, we will fight. And Russians should know that step by step we will increase the production of everything so that they too feel what we are feeling.
This is truly a powerful message because Putin only understands strength, and Ukraine is demonstrating it. Russia is already feeling what we are feeling. Look at Belgorod, the shutdowns of oil refineries in the Rhinegrad region. And not only that, the Kremlin is paying for its crimes. And this is just the beginning. Do you agree? Like and share this episode because our struggle is a shared one. President Donald Trump stated that he has, to a certain extent, made a decision to transfer long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. However, according to him, first he wants to know exactly what these missiles will be used for. Meanwhile, the Kremlin immediately reacted to the transfer of Tomahawks to Ukraine. In Russia, they claim to fear these missiles and threaten to strike major European countries that are partners of Ukraine.
If strikes are to be carried out, then they should be carried out against those countries that play a significant role in opposing Russia. I mean, European countries. After all, the Tomahawk is a missile that for a long time was in service with the US Navy in its nuclear version. Yes, President Obama, so to speak, seemed to have given them up, but they were not destroyed. They are stored and waiting for their time. And by the way, Trump said that they would be returned to the Navy. Therefore, we cannot rule out that if these missiles are supplied even without nuclear warheads, but if the missile is a potential carrier, the Ukrainians, with the help of the Americans, could, so to speak, do something there.
The spokesperson for the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, stated that the supply of American Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine would mean an escalation of the conflict. In addition, Vladimir Putin himself threatened Donald Trump with a severance of relations if these missiles were transferred to Ukraine. According to Peskov, Russia's position on the Tomahawk issue was hinted at. Supposedly, the discussion could be about missiles with a nuclear payload.
This would be an escalation leak, but it would not be able to change the situation for Kiev.
According to estimates by the Institute for the Study of War, at least 1,945 Russian military facilities are within the range of the Tomahawk missile. And within a radius of 1,600 kilometers, there are no fewer than 1,655. If Ukraine were to receive such missiles, it would be able to significantly weaken the combat capability of the Russian Federation. The possible transfer of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine was commented on social media by MP Yegor Chernyam.
As for Trump's decision to provide us with Tomahawks, everything will not happen as quickly as we would like, because first and foremost, this is a means of putting pressure on Putin and an attempt to force him to negotiate. And only after that will it be about strengthening our military capabilities. It was no accident that Trump said he had almost made up his mind, that he didn't want escalation, and that he wanted to clarify how these missiles would be used. At first, we will be given the missiles, but only a few or a couple dozen, and we won't be allowed to use them right away. They'll wait and see how the Kremlin reacts. If there is no reaction, we will be able to strike a few times at the Russian border. If even after that Putin still doesn't agree to negotiations, we'll be able to slightly increase the range and the supplies will grow a bit. The range of use and the volume of missile supplies will increase as Putin continues to escalate the war. And finally, only after some time will all restrictions be lifted, except perhaps for strikes on the Kremlin and directly on Putin himself. This whole saga could take at least several months. But this is already real pressure and a real argument.
Will Ukraine receive Tomahawks, and when might this happen? Share your thoughts in the comments, I'll definitely read them. China is providing Russia with its satellite data, which helps the aggressor carry out strikes on Ukraine. A source in foreign intelligence reported this to Ukrinform. During a recent attack on western Ukraine that claimed lives, 3 Chinese satellites were recorded over the region, writes Military. Has Xi Jinping really openly taken Putin's side? All the details are in our report.
China continues to pretend that it is maintaining neutrality in Russia's war against Ukraine, but in reality it is spying from space, passing information to the Kremlin.
China has developed unique relationships. During
the nighttime Russian strike on Ukraine on October 5th, it was specifically Chinese activity that was observed over the western regions. According to the monitoring service Hevanebav, which tracks satellite movements, at least 3 Chinese reconnaissance satellites of the Yaughan 33 series were circling over Lviv and neighboring regions. The Iron Spies managed to make 9 orbits during the night. In the morning, they were joined by another satellite capable of conducting optical reconnaissance. Its mission was to make 7 more passes throughout the day.
China has managed to create a fairly extensive group of reconnaissance satellites. It uses this information and provides it to Russia.
The satellites' orbits were at a low altitude, which made it possible to obtain clear, detailed images. Analysts do not rule out that such a coincidence in timing and route is not accidental at all. This may be evidence of intelligence cooperation between Beijing and the Kremlin, involving the exchange of data on the air situation, the location of air defense systems, and the movement of Ukrainian aviation. Ukrainian foreign intelligence confirms this.
There is evidence of a high level of cooperation between Russia and China in conducting satellite reconnaissance of Ukrainian territory in order to identify and further investigate strategic targets for strikes. At the same time, as we have seen in recent months, these targets may belong to foreign investors.
As expected, the Chinese ministry quickly stated that it knows nothing about the transfer of satellite data to the Russians for missile strikes on Ukraine. Chinese diplomats emphasized that Beijing maintains a fair, objective, and impartial position regarding the Ukrainian crisis.
China is neither the party that started the Ukrainian crisis nor a participant in it. However, as a permanent member of the UN Security Council and a responsible state, we have always maintained an objective and impartial position, actively promoted reconciliation and negotiations, and this approach has been widely recognized by the international community.
Yes, in the official rhetoric of the PRC, there is still no place for the word war regarding the conflict that Putin treacherously unleashed in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Yaogan satellites continue to observe Ukraine from orbits about 700 kilometers high, completing a full revolution around the Earth every hour and a half. Officially, they are studying natural resources and preventing natural disasters. But in practice, we're talking about military devices equipped with radars that can see even through clouds, smoke, and even at night.
I want to emphasize once again that Russian-Chinese cooperation on the international stage is undoubtedly one of the key factors for stability in the world, for strategic stability.
These satellites are a product of the new generation of Chinese intelligence launched in 2022 to 2023. They provide high-precision surveillance close in quality to Western systems.
China, like the United States, has this real-time satellite reconnaissance system. The Russian Federation does not have real-time capability. They have GLONASS, which does not fully cover the globe. There aren't enough satellites in orbit to completely loop around the Earth's surface. And they can't operate in real time, they don't have that kind of intelligence capability, but China does. And China provides data for target selection and missile strikes. I have no doubt that China is also transmitting the results of the strikes to the Russian Federation in real time.
Back in 2024, American intelligence reported that China was providing Russia with all the necessary intelligence information, which is used not only in the war against Ukraine, but also to monitor NATO military activity in Europe. In addition, in 2022, a company linked to the Wagner PMC purchased 2 Chinese satellites for intelligence gathering, signing a contract worth more than $30 million. Since the spring of 2024, Beijing has increased its military support for Moscow. This is not only about intelligence data, but also about supplying optics for military equipment, rocket fuel, and machinery for tank production.
Russia currently holds the significant 4th largest share in China's overall trade turnover, a notable economic partnership. Oh, you see, this matters to everyone.
China also supplies Russia with special chemicals, gunpowder, and equipment for 20 military factories of the Russian Federation. In the Shahed drones that Russia uses to strike Ukrainian cities in 2025, new protected antennas with markings in Chinese have been found. While Beijing, led by Xi Jinping, denies its close friendship with dictator Putin, by the beginning of 2025, up to 80% of the critical electronics for Russian drones are of Chinese origin.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Ukrainian soldiers have completely finished eliminating the Russian occupiers in Yampil in the Donbas.
The situation in the region has been stabilized, but Russian forces continue to try to put pressure on Ukrainian positions by various means.
Meanwhile, the situation in the Pokrovsk direction remains tense. According to Ukrainian military analyst Mukhtov, the Shaktyorsky and Solneknaya neighborhoods have become what is known as a gray zone.
The overall plan is to capture the city from the south and east, bypass defensive lines, and reach the rear. Their behavior and direction of movement repeat the scenarios they have already practiced for flanking and reaching rear areas.
According to the Deep State portal, the enemy has encircled Malivka in the Dnipropetrovsk region. The enemy has also advanced near Novoyevanivka and Okhotniche in Zaporizhzhia, Voronove in the Dnipropetrovsk region, as well as near Bila Hora in the Donetsk region. But there is also good news from the Dnipropetrovsk region. There, fighters from the 141st Separate Mechanized Brigade carried out a successful assault operation and liberated the village of Sichneve. Yes, the published footage shows real combat actions, during which the Shkval assault unit eliminated 50 Russian occupiers and captured 8 more. However, that's not all. Ukrainian defenders delivered powerful strikes against enemy equipment and positions. In particular, a Russian radar station, electronic warfare system, and the Zhitel were destroyed. a rare and extremely dangerous system capable of jamming communications and GPS navigation at distances of up to 50 kilometers. Also, for the first time in history, Ukrainian soldiers destroyed a Russian combat robot courier equipped with an automatic AGS-17 grenade launcher using a drone in the Pokrovsk area. And on the left bank of the Dnipro, Ukrainian UAV pilots and operators destroyed an enemy drone control center, a field ammunition depot, communication antennas, vehicles, and enemy personnel. Meanwhile, things are uneasy even within Russia itself, even among allies. Information is spreading on social media that in the Kursk region, conflicts are arising between Russian soldiers and North Korean units. The Koreans react aggressively to the use of mobile phones. They have even opened fire on Russian vehicles in border areas.
People are afraid to take out their phones. The Koreans believe that if you're filming, it means you're a spy. There have been cases where they fired just for having a camera in your hands. Formally, they are allies, but it feels like it's us who have to adapt. And these are no longer just rumors. Such incidents are being reported by several different units at once.
We must not tire of admiring the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They are holding the front and standing up to a huge horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge you to support the armed forces of Ukraine, and if you can't do so financially, write them words of encouragement in the comments. I know they're watching us. Besides Koreans, there are also about 5,000 Cubans fighting on the side of Putin's army. This was reported by the White House. We will tell you how Russian recruiters deceive naive foreigners and lure them to certain death.
There has been an increase in the ranks of allies fighting for Russia. This time they come from faraway Latin America, Cuba.
They have been continuously fighting since the early 1960s, which was the period when Fidel Castro initially came to power in the Caribbean nation of Cuba. Additionally, Cuban soldiers also actively fought in various conflicts across Latin America. Then Fidel Castro had the idea of landing the Cuban army elsewhere. There were these crazy ideas to start an uprising in Africa and turn the whole continent communist. That is precisely why, for many Cubans, given the country's absolute and pervasive poverty, engaging in war is often considered one of the most viable ways to earn a living and make money.
According to classified U.S. State Department documents reviewed by Reuters, Havana is not just supporting the Kremlin's policy. It may have sent up to 5,000 of its citizens to fight in the war against Ukraine.
I knew the contract was real when I arrived. The Russian Federation brought me here. Everyone here knew why they came. I know that for sure. Everyone knew they were coming to war.
This is Enrique Gonzalez. He joined the ranks of the Russian army to make some money by killing Ukrainians.
I see.
Found out my son had been recruited the day he left. I don't know how this process happened because he never told me anything about it. I realized it when he was at the airport. He called me and told me everything.
The active recruitment of Cubans for the war began back in 2023. This happened after the Russian dictator signed a decree allowing foreigners who joined the army to obtain Russian citizenship through an expedited process. After that, dozens of Cubans rushed off to war.
Poverty forces people to do it. If we didn't live in such poverty, I'm sure these people wouldn't have gone to Russia. But as it is, you just work and work and work. My husband worked himself to the bone in Cuba. One day he told me, I can't take this anymore. I asked him what had happened. He replied, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. My husband was like that.
According to available information, recruitment centers are located in different regions. Candidates are promised salaries ranging from $1,500 to $2,500 a month, citizenship or residency, benefits in case of injury, and other perks. For some companies, Moscow creates entire package offers: payment, housing, legalization. All of this makes the offer attractive to economically vulnerable people.
The method of luring foreign soldiers is quite simple. The most prominent countries are chosen. That is, Latin American or African countries or even Asian countries. For example, North Korea are offered more or less competitive pay and people are willing to fight. That is, it's not just about the Cubans, of whom about 5,000 are fighting. Those are the figures available online. We're talking about around 3,000 North Korean military personnel and several thousand mercenaries from African countries.
Intermediaries, including travel agencies, are recruiting thousands of foreign mercenaries for what is called Russia's elite international battalion. They use flashy advertising campaigns, promises of high earnings, and tricks when signing contracts. Recruitment and agitation mainly take place through Telegram, according to the Los Angeles Times.
The advertisement was simple. Sign up for a year to fight on Russia's side in the Special Military Operations Zone, that is, in the war in Ukraine, and receive citizenship, free medical care, money, and land, according to the Los Angeles Times article.
But not everything is done honestly for everyone. Contracts for foreigners are often drafted in such a way that they cannot fully understand them. They provide a translator, but there is no Wi-Fi. After arriving at the front, requests to terminate the contract require a payment of up to $6,000. Another method used by recruiters is through student and tourist visas. Many foreigners initially come to Russia on these visas and then sign a contract with the Russian Ministry of Defense. They are met by brokers and Russian officers right at the airports. To motivate new mercenaries, recruiters publish messages about supposed victories of the Russian army while concealing defeats. Despite all the risks, foreigners' interest does not disappear. Meanwhile, the US is stepping up diplomatic efforts to neutralize the Cuban factor in Russia's war against Ukraine. The Donald Trump administration is mobilizing American diplomats to fight against the UN resolution calling for the lifting of the decades-long trade embargo on Cuba. The document from the US State Department emphasizes that Cuba uses international initiatives such as the annual UN resolution to present itself as a victim of sanctions, even though in reality its citizens are involved in combat operations on the side of the aggressor.
The Cuban regime has failed to protect its citizens from being used as pawns in the Russia-Ukraine war, stated a State Department representative.
Every recruited soul is not just a number in the statistics. For the Kremlin, it's a chance to get ahead. Moscow is systematically expanding the pool of foreigners willing to fight for its interests. For the terrorist state, such people are nothing more than cheap labor and cannon fodder. For the mercenaries, it's a chance to make easy money.
China has joined Russia's hybrid war against Europe. This was reported by Bloomberg. A columnist for the agency, Hal Brands, a distinguished professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, writes that Russia's hybrid war against Europe is expanding. Constant drone flights are disrupting air traffic. Russian aircraft are crossing Estonian airspace. Moscow's agents try to influence the elections in Moldova. In addition, the campaign includes sabotage of underwater vessels, provocations in the Balkans, and surveillance of critical communication lines in the Atlantic. According to Brands, the Kremlin's goal is to weaken NATO's eastern flank, intimidate Europe, and separate it from the United States.
Putin is dividing Europe while simultaneously striking at Ukraine. His motivation is multifaceted. Hybrid warfare is intended to punish Europe for supporting Ukrainian resistance. It serves as a warning to European countries about the consequences of deploying troops in Ukraine after a possible ceasefire. More fundamentally, hybrid warfare is aimed at weakening and destabilizing the eastern part of the transatlantic alliance, which has long contained Russian influence while remaining divided from its western part. Moscow's deepest dream, as Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev once said, was to break the alliance between the US and Europe. Ideologies change, but geopolitical imperatives remain.
Bloomberg reports that China is carrying out cyber attacks and supporting joint disinformation campaigns with the Russian Federation. In addition, Beijing is strengthening its influence in southeastern Europe, creating the so-called Silk Curtain, which could divide the region. Brands responds that the partnership between the Kremlin and Beijing increases the need for Europe to rearm and support Ukraine in order to maintain the continent's security and transatlantic unity. But that's not all. The publication Politico reports that tankers from Russia's shadow fleet continue to dump oil off the coasts of Europe. Despite the sanctions, this indicates the continent's countries are unable to contain this activity. According to the publication, over the past year, at least 5 tankers from the Russian fleet, which evades sanctions, were freely present in European waters after dumping oil, as revealed by an investigation by the non-profit journalism group Source Material and Politico. 2 of these vessels were already subject to British sanctions before they left oil traces in the sea. Latvia's Minister of Energy, Kaspar Smelts, called these incidents a huge problem. According to him, Europeans are lucky that, so far, they have not faced an environmental disaster.
The Shadow Fleet is a desperate and dangerous attempt by Putin to maintain oil revenues, at the same time polluting the sea. He uses vessels that ignore basic safety standards, increasing the risk of catastrophic oil spills.
What do you think Russia and China's plans are? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'll definitely read them. The Latvian government has decided to continue the partial closure of airspace at the border with Belarus and Russia. This was reported by the country's Ministry of Defense. However, the agency did not specify how long the closure will remain in effect. They noted that it will be enforced at night from 8 o'clock p.m. to 7 o'clock a.m. The Ministry of Defense explained that the decision was made due to incidents involving airspace violations in other NATO countries. Let me remind you, the airspace in this section of Latvia's border was closed for the first time from September 11th to 18th. Then the restriction was extended until October 8th, but only at night, when the risk of drone appearances is highest. Well, I'm sure Latvia won't be the only one. Other countries will soon join as well. Like, if you agree. Deputy Chairman of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, named the purpose of the raid by unknown drones on strategic sites in Europe. At the same time, he indirectly confirmed that Russia is behind it.
The main thing is for the short-sighted Europeans to feel on their own skin what the danger of war is, to be so afraid and trembling like dumb animals in a herd being driven to the slaughter, to soil themselves in fear, sensing their imminent and agonizing end. Maybe then they'll understand what war really is and tear the heads off their freaks like Scholz and Macron, who are making money and scoring political points on blood.
Meanwhile, at the Institute for the Study of War, they are confident that Russia is preparing the informational and psychological groundwork for a possible war with NATO. At the same time, analysts note an increase in the number of statements and false flag operations targeting European countries, from Poland and Moldova to Serbia, as well as a rise in sabotage, attacks, drone strikes and cyber special operations. Moscow is seeking to sow fear in Europe, weaken NATO's resolve and reduce support for Ukraine.
Russia appears to be conducting coordinated preparations as part of both the physical and psychological phase, setting the stage for military scenarios. The organized nature of these activities indicates that Russia has moved into the first phase of preparation. Phase 0 in order to escalate to a higher level of war than the one it is currently involved in, specifically towards a possible war with NATO.
What do you think Russia is really planning? Share your thoughts in the comments. Here's the news. A new drone killer has appeared in Ukraine. The Ukrainian tech startup Wild Hornets developed its interceptor drone in just a few months and named it Sting, which translates from English as sting or bite. According to German journalists, the latest Ukrainian-made drone fighter, according to military experts, is setting new standards for European anti-drone defense. About 5 months ago, this drone killer successfully intercepted an enemy UAV for the first time, reaching speeds of over 315 kilometers per hour. Maximum altitude? 3,000 meters. Price? $2,100. About a week ago, Wild Hornets reported on social network X that the Sting helped the military destroy more than 500 targets in just 2 months of operation. And they say this is just the beginning. The media writes that Kyiv aims to mass-produce thousands of Stings to destroy Russian drones more cheaply and effectively. Given the cases of drone sightings in the countries of the data region, interest in this technology has also increased in Europe. Well, let's look forward to new, equally interesting reports about the successes of the Sting. And do you remember that absurd statement by Putin in his interview with Tucker Carlson, where he said that Ukraine was an artificial state created by Soviet leadership at the expense of other countries' territories? So, there is proof that Europe knew about us as far back as 270 years ago. French blogger Xavier Teitelman found a 1754 map in the National Library of France with the inscription, Ukraine, land of the Cossacks. Listen to what he said.
Oh my God, doesn't it say Ukraine, land of the Cossacks? Look how far it stretches, really far. And what do we have to the north? The Russian Empire or Muscovy? That's Mordor to the north.
So then,
Russians, learn your history, because in the 18th century, Europe knew Ukraine as the land of the Cossacks and Russia as Muscovy, which you so eagerly try to distance yourselves from as if it were leprosy. You see, yet another of Putin's lies about an artificial Ukraine falls apart when the truth comes out. So keep your terrace forever. Ukrainian statehood existed back when there were only frogs croaking in your swamps. How do you like our news? Write to us about what we should improve to become better. We will definitely take it into account. In the meantime, please like this video to support what we do. And be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss future episodes. See you soon.